Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I know that I hadn't posted in a while, but I'm back and I've been reading and preparing a lot of new material that I'm very excited to share with you in the upcoming weeks. Hopefully, I would like to start posting again more regularly as a few months back. I also wanted to take a moment to thank all of you who took some time to share a comment or just a thought on some of my previous videos. I really appreciate you. It's particularly because it's rather time consuming, despite the fact that I really have a lot of fun doing these videos. It's just nice to know that I'm not just speaking into the void. And speaking about the void, that brings us right to today's video, which is the number zero, a concept that is so familiar to us today, but that has actually not existed for most of human history. So let's get right into it. This is the story of the number zero. Around the year 300 BCE, the Babylonians developed a base 16 numeral system, where place values increased in powers of 60 rather than 10. A legacy we still see today in measuring things like time and angles, for example. They used a placeholder symbol to mark an empty position between digits, but never at the end of a number, and never as a true number in its own right. For example, if a number had no 60s in it, a special mark would be inserted so people would see the difference between a value like 3661 and simply 3601. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the Maya independently developed a base 20 numeral system using dots and bars to represent quantities. Unlike the Babylonians, they did not limit zero to a placeholder role, but rather their zero was used both to mark an empty position between digits and as a number in its own right, one that could appear at the end of a number, be used in calculations, and represent the result of subtracting equal quantities. This conceptual leap allowed the Maya to perform more advanced arithmetic and to create highly accurate calendars and astronomical records, centuries before zero gained the same acceptance in Eurasia. In the 7th century, the Indian scholar Brahmagupta defined zero as a number and laid out its arithmetic properties. Crucially, he grappled with division by zero, noting its undefined nature, a conceptual fracture in the logical system. From there, zero spread to the Islamic Golden Age, where thinkers translated and expanded on it. The ancient Greeks, despite their brilliance in geometry, logic, and abstract thought, had no numeral for zero. Philosophically, thinkers like Parmenides argued that what is not cannot be thought of or spoken of, while mathematicians wrestle with puzzles about infinite divisibility and motion that might have been more approachable with a proper concept of nothingness. Their mathematics, grounded in geometry, could describe infinitely small quantities in theory, but without a symbolic representation for nothing, negative numbers, or algebraic notation, they never made the leap to formal calculus, a breakthrough that would only come nearly 2 millennia later. When zero finally reached medieval Europe, it encountered both practical resistance and theological unease. In Christian thought, nothingness could evoke the absence of God, a void linked with chaos and the devil, and the symbol itself, arriving via the Arabic, carried that stigma of foreignness. Some European city-states even banned its use, fearing it's linked with the occult. Accepting zero demanded not just a mathematical shift, but a confrontation with deep-seated religious and cultural assumptions. It wasn't until Fibonacci, a 13th century Italian mathematician who you might know for the discovery of the Fibonacci sequence, learned and introduced the Hindu-Arabic numeral system we use today in the West. Without Fibonacci's advocacy, the West might have clung to Roman numerals for far longer, delaying not just efficient trade, but the scientific revolution itself. The number zero marks one of the most radical moments in human intellectual history. It was also a philosophical and symbolical transformation of the human thought. More than a mere representation, it's a marker of that which cannot be marked, so to speak. But why the hesitation? Because zero represented a paradox that threatened metaphysical assumptions. How can nothing represent something? It meant accepting that absence could change form. Mathematically, zero behaves well in multiplication and addition, but it breaks down in division. To divide by zero is to ask what number multiplied by zero yields a non-zero result, but zero times anything is zero. The operation admits no solution. Allowing it produces contradictions such as this one. This is not simply a rule violation, it's a violation of coherence, a moment where the internal logic of mathematics fails to account for the terms it has created. For the Austrian philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein, language functions by mapping reality through propositions. What lies beyond this, he said, what cannot be said but only shown, is the realm of the metaphysical. It marks the boundary of limit of sense, not its content. Zero, like silence in music, is not a thing in and of itself, but a boundary marker. It tells us where something ends and something else begins. In that sense, zero is philosophically homologous to Wittgenstein's unsayable. Like a proposition cannot express its own structure, likewise, zero cannot express anything, yet makes expression possible. In philosophy, the zero behaves like what Kant called the noumenon, the thing in and of itself, something that is unknowable, something that cannot be seen or touched. It's a limit concept, an idea that cannot be reduced to empirical data, not something we know, but something we need to posit in order to know anything else. In the same way, we never really encounter zero directly. What we encounter is its structuring role, its ability to mark absence, to define boundaries, to give shape to systems by introducing emptiness. Nietzsche warned us that if you gaze long into the abyss will also eventually gaze into you. Zero, when pursued to its logical extreme, can act like such an abyss. It is not merely the absence of value, but the collapse of valuation, the point at which language, logic, and thought break down. This is comparable, by analogy, to what astronomers call an event horizon, a boundary beyond which our current models of space and time no longer apply. In mathematics and in philosophy, zero marks a similar threshold. It is an intellectual event horizon where our conceptual frameworks can no longer contain the implications of nothingness and we encounter the limits of reason. In Dostoevsky's novel Netochka Nezranova, a novel he never finished, yet one that contains one of his most radical ideas, we find the protagonist, whose name literally translates to nameless nobody. Netochka is a young woman whose identity is never fully formed. Her narrative dissolves into ambiguity, especially in her relationship with a female friend, coded perhaps as a repressed homosexual desire. But more than that, Netochka stands at the edge of selfhood, not an I, but a placeholder for identity that was never granted. She is potential, void, remainder, a figure not yet totalized, not a daughter, not a lover, not even a character, just a null point. Her desires are never consummated, never fully acknowledged. Like zero, they are present through absence, structurally significant yet unarticulated. Nitochka becomes a figure of zeroed identity, a self constituted not through essence but through voids, silences, and the refusal of categorization. Her unfinished narrative is not a failure but a formal reflection of what she is, a subject that cannot be resolved. Just as zero, when placed in the denominator, it resists all resolution. Zero is a philosophical artifact, a symbol of what cannot be named but must be acknowledged. It marks the boundary of representation in mathematics, the limit of epistemology in philosophy, and the unspeakable interior of identity in literature. To study zero is not to study nothing, but to explore the architecture of absence upon which our systems are built. As silence structures speech, the void shapes form, and zero remains the most generative nothing we have ever created. And in the most literal sense, zero is not the absence of value, but the value of absence.